Give it up for my homie, Evan Combest.
So, I saw Kevin Hart in the news today getting a lot of criticism because he was doing this interview for a movie he's promoting, and in that interview he was asked about how does cancel culture affect stand-up comedy, because that's what they ask every comedian in every interview ever these days. In that interview, when Kevin was asked that question, Kevin was saying it's a little bit more challenging now, and that he said it's difficult because you're thinking of things you're going to say might come back to bite you in the ass, and I can't be the same comedian now that I was when I first started. And that was met with a ton of backlash of saying, yo, Kevin, it ain't that. You just not funny no more. Now, I get it. It's cool to hate Kevin Hart on social media. I understand that. On social media, there's just certain people, no matter what they post or whatever news comes out about them, they gonna get met with some type of hate or criticism or jokes. Like, that's just the internet. Like, I know there was back in the times when whenever J. Cole put out anything, he was met with, yo, that new J. Cole coming out? You know we getting some fire sleep tonight. Like, on social media, there's just people that is cool to hate. But with this particular interview with Kevin Hart saying that I can't be the same comedian that I was when I first started, and then it being met with, yo, Kevin Hart, you just not funny, which is a common critique people say about Kevin Hart whenever it regards his specials or his movies and his work of recent. For me, as somebody who does stand-up comedy on a much smaller scale, it's just the fact that, like, people also harken back to Cat Williams' recent interview where Cat Williams said that cancel culture is good because we need these lines because you can't go out of bounds, and if you can't be funny within these times without being offensive and hurting somebody's feelings and blah blah blah, or maybe stand-up comedy just isn't for you. Now, as much as I want to agree with that statement and acknowledging that Cat Williams has said offensive jokes in the past, as most comedians have, Cat Williams used to promote himself with an image that may not be deemed appropriate now, and he's changed from that because it's called growth. And if anybody's read the Kevin Hart interview, in there he talks about growth and not being the same comedian anymore. I understand that with stand-up comedy at its purest is freedom of speech. It's unhinged stand-up, and not to say that it has to be shock value. I'm just saying that there's no rules to stand-up comedy. There's no governing body overseeing every comedian ever. Like, comedians don't have to go somewhere to get a license to perform that could be revoked if they misbehave or inappropriate or deemed an action that was so heinous that they can't perform anymore. There's no governing body to stand-up comedy. So within that, it's free range. And within today's social climate, people are starting to put up these borders about things that are deemed inappropriate and you're not allowed to say. And I'm not against that. There's some things that people probably shouldn't talk about on stage. I understand that. And there's a lot of people who get on stage and say offensive things just for the point of being offensive. I get it. I find it contradictory that nowadays you get these people on social media who put up these borders about things that they don't want comedians to talk about, and then at the same time will complain that comedians not funny anymore. It's like, well, you knew me for talking about the stuff you said I can't talk about. That's when you said I was funny. You said I was funny when I was talking about all the things you said I can't talk about no more. So now I can't talk about these things. Now all of a sudden, whatever I talk about isn't funny, which is just like, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying that we gotta go back and talk about the things that's not offensive. I'm just saying that we gotta start being selective of what we're calling offensive. And when we're talking about stand-up comedy, it's so different from when you're in the comedy club, me as a comic on stage, you as a person in the audience, and you as a person watching this on television, on your phone, on YouTube, on social media, watching a clip or hearing an audio clip. Is so much different than what happens in that room, and whether or not if it was intended to be put out to the world. So I just want to add that layer of context when we're criticizing and judging and getting ready to call out comedians to be held accountable on things that they say on stage, which I'm not against. I'm just saying we gotta add that extra layer to it. Because it's super contradictory that Kevin Hart could come out and say, I can't tell the same jokes that I told back then because they were deemed offensive. And I'm not talking about his tweets. I'm talking about the jokes he said on stage, and some of the things that he said may not be deemed appropriate today that y'all found funny. When y'all said he was funny, this is what was going on. And now you said he can't talk about that. And now what he chooses to talk about now, which was within the realms of what y'all said he could talk about, isn't funny anymore. And it's just super weird to me because at the same time that y'all say that these comedians and stand-up comedy is just whack and stand-up comedy is not funny anymore, and everybody who's putting out stuff is just whack or it's mid or whatever you're gonna say, whatever critique you got towards it, it's super odd because if you ask these people who are y'all favorite comedians, you're gonna name a Richard Pryor, you're gonna name a Bernie Mac, you're gonna name Eddie Murphy, you're gonna throw out a Dave Chappelle, you're probably gonna throw out a name of a comedian who said something that can't be said today. You might throw out a Patrice O'Neal. You're gonna point out the name of a comedian who says things that may not be acceptable in today's standards. And that's the part that blows my mind. Because I'm just like, wait a minute. How are we critiquing comedy if we keep creating these lines that say that, this is what's deemed inappropriate. So what you got to say? And all right, cool. Let me go out and try to get around this, or let me try to figure it out. And I try to say something, and you go, nah, my nigga, that ain't it. Okay, well, damn. Well, who do you like? Nah, I like all the niggas who used to do that shit. Like, I love the DL Hughes. I love the Bernie Macs. I love Patrice O'Neal. I love Richard Pryor. Like, it don't make no type of sense to me. And look, I get it. It's cool to hate Kevin Hart. And look, as of me filming this video, Kevin Hart has tweeted out his response to the criticism that he's getting. And I'm going to put up the tweets right now so you can read them. And I'm just going to say it. I don't have any negative comments about Kevin Hart myself. But I will say, he does have a tendency to come off condescending whenever he responds to criticism. That nigga, man, he knows how to come off a little bit spicy. Whenever it's time to respond to some backlash or some criticism, he sure does know how to come off condescending to the people he's talking to. When it comes to stand-up comedy, my biggest thing is, and I'm not trying to say cancel culture is bad, we gotta end it, because there's comedians out there who say stuff I don't agree with, there's comedians who say stuff I don't find funny, there's comedians who say stuff I get offended by personally, but I'm not trying to stop them from performing their art. It's just the fact of like, there's this thing that we all can do. It's called not supported. Like when a comedian's on stage and he says something, or he might take that risk and say something a little bit edgy, if the crowd doesn't laugh, and he does it again and the crowd still doesn't laugh, he goes somewhere else and he says it and the crowd doesn't laugh, within the joke building process, if the crowd's not laughing, the comedian's probably gonna stop saying that. That's the ultimate form of canceling a joke, because if you don't laugh and the people in the room don't laugh at that joke probably is not gonna get said. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, we just try to make people laugh in this motherfucker. If you don't find somebody funny, you find somebody offensive, or you just don't like that person, you don't have to support them. It's that simple. You don't have to support it. We all have you don't gotta talk about it. You can, it's your right. You can criticize and talk about it all you want, but you have to acknowledge when you talk about something on social media, you're only driving that person's engagement. You're making them relevant. Even if it's negative, if it's positive, if you're talking about them on social media, it's making them relevant, and they can use those numbers to continue to get work, so you'll continue to see them and hate them. So if you really don't like somebody, it's probably best you don't talk about them at all. You have to understand your power as a customer and as a viewer, that you just don't have to talk about it at all. You're free to criticize it, just understand what comes with it. I just found it super hypocritical that society and cancel culture, or just holding comedians accountable for things that they say on stage. Y'all say comedians aren't funny anymore because of the rules that y'all put in place. So whose fault is that? Is that the comedian's fault? Is that your fault? If y'all creating the rules that y'all don't even enjoy the results of, maybe it's time to change the rules again. But hey, those are just my thoughts. I probably might change them in the future. Don't hold me to this. But that's all I got to say. I'd love to hear what you got to say about it. Comment it down below. Let me know. Follow me on social media. And I'll see y'all next time. I'm done.